have been lost. What were your thoughts as this was ongoing, and what was the immediate response of the U.S. President? Give us some of the behind the scenes.
Well, Julie, first, my thoughts when this first started to unfold were horror. I was shocked. Obviously, you know, this has happened before in Kenya, it's happened other places, it's happened in the United States. But it's always, to me, unbelievable that individuals, terrorists, violent extremists can act with such inhumanity and at a school against young men and women who are studying to build a better future for their country, for themselves, for their families. So it was really with shock and horror, and I just want to underscore that the United States condemns in the strongest possible terms terrorist attacks like this one by al-Shabaab. Certainly the reaction by American officials, President Obama and others, was the same. It was shock, it was horror that this was happening.
We will come back to his reactions and his visit, which is still on. He confirmed that to Kenya. But first, we've seen stories earlier analyzing the response of Kenya's security mechanisms. What are your thoughts on what actually unfolded, the response time or the professionalism?
Well, first I want to just commend the heroism with which the Kenyan security forces, both the military and the police, responded. They went in and they helped to rescue people, they helped to save lives, at the risk of their own lives. So I commend them for what they did. I don't have all of the information about what happened, but from what I know, it appears to me that the Kenyan security services have improved, that they've done a better job in this occasion than, for example, in Westgate. At the same time, what's critically important is that after an attack like this, that the government take a hard look at what happened. Who knew what when? What was the response like? Were the decisions that were made the right ones? It's only by a clear-eyed, hard-hitting investigation, a look into what happened after the event, that you can improve for the next time.
Learn the lessons that need to be learned. Let's go to the cooperation. And, you know, we sit back and go through this and look at the U.S., which we see as a key ally. And we ask, what's being done to improve our responsiveness, to improve our security mechanisms generally, even when it comes to intelligence? So give us some tangible projects or initiatives that are ongoing right now that can give us hope as a nation.
The United States and Kenya are close partners in this war against al-Qaeda, war against al-Shabaab. So we do a lot. We provide a lot of information. We provide equipment. We provide training. Just in the past few years, we provided over 10 billion shillings worth of assistance. And it's very practical sorts of things. So, for example, it's boats, it's aircraft, it's ISR equipment. It's training for several hundred.
I was going to say, how much training is
It's a lot of training. Every year, several hundred Kenyan security force members are trained by the United States, and it's really everybody. It's from the military to KWS to people providing security on the border. We do a very wide range of training. It's critically important, and it's a big part of what we're doing.
So let's come to the issue, and it's the question everybody must be asking you, and it's a critical question, knowing that America has been through this, and many nations stand by America when these attacks happened. Definitely 9/11, everybody was there, you know, sending the wishes and traveling as well, even to an area that you would think people would not want to go to. But then when it comes to Kenya, of course, they're the alerts, you know, they're advisories, and they have a huge impact, particularly when it comes to the coastal region, where this radicalization is happening. So perhaps the question I have for you is not necessarily why the travel advisories, but is there any recognition that these advisories could be counterproductive because they could actually help with radicalization when jobs are gone and people don't have opportunities? Is that something that factors into the thinking?
Julie, these security advisories, the travel warnings, the United States has them in place for many countries around the world. So it's not just Kenya. We have one in place, for example, on the Philippines, and one in place on Mexico. And what we do in them is we give the American people the facts. It's a factual accounting of the security situation. We do not say in the Kenya travel warning, don't come to Kenya. We don't do that. What we do is provide information so that American citizens can make decisions about their own security. It really is the first responsibility of any government to provide information to its citizens. There are still many, many Americans who come here, more than 100,000 every year. And we will work with the Kenyan government, we are working with the Kenyan government to improve security. And that's really what has to happen here. The critical focus should be on the security situation, not on the travel warnings. How do we make security better? Once the security situation's improved, then we can change the warning. Then we can adjust it and in some cases even remove it.
So an obligation to your citizens to give the information, you say. Let's come then to you know, the Al-Shabaab who claimed responsibility for the Garissa attack and other attacks previously, such as Westgate, have said, you know, they take issue with Kenya for going into Somalia. The Kenya Defense Forces must withdraw.
Right.
What is the U.S. position on that?
Al-Shabaab a few years ago changed from being focused inside Somalia to becoming an affiliate of Al-Qaeda. It became part of this international terror network. And it is now focused on establishing a caliphate up and down the coast of East Africa. And part of that caliphate would be in Kenya. It would be along the coast and it would be in northeast part of Kenya. So they're going to pose a threat here, regardless. If Kenya withdrew, they're not going to leave you alone. They're not going to leave Kenya alone. They're going to continue to try to achieve their radical, violent, murderous agenda. The only way to deal with Al-Shabaab is to confront them, to do the right things to ensure security in Kenya, and then to go after them in Somalia. So, frankly, I commend the government and the Kenyan security forces for everything that they're doing. And we're happy to be a partner in that effort, to work with Kenya to end the threat of Al-Shabaab. But there is no negotiating with these terrorists. There's no solution other than dealing with the underlying threat.
We're going to be taking your views in just a moment, and perhaps some questions that you might have for the ambassador here today, Robert Godec, the U.S. ambassador to Kenya. We're going to net search in a moment, but just to say, for those who do think that pulling out Kenya Defense Forces is an answer, you will recall that our borders, and we'll come to the border issue as well, which is critical. A lot of people saying, should we have a wall or a fence? And this is being discussed. We'll come to that. But they were coming into Kenya. 2 occasions I was up by the borders, and they had castrated a Kenyan chief and come in, and you know, horrifying things going on. Also, of course, the terrorists who were kidnapped and taken across the border. So many issues. We'll come back to discussing some of those in a short while, but my director tells me we have to go to net search, and then we will be back with the interview. We're looking at the top trends on Google search over the past week. What have you been searching? I think definitely Garissa attack will be one of those things, but we'll see where it stands on the top 10 list. Let's start there. We have at number 10, List of Shame starts us off. During the State of the Nation address, as you will recall, because this featured last week as well, President Uhuru Kenyatta handed a report to Parliament detailing 175 state officers facing investigations over corruption. This was early last week. The list has prompted 5 cabinet and 5 principal secretaries to temporarily vacate office. Let's go to number 9 now. And this is Barack Obama, and of course this is because of an announcement by State House spokesperson Manoa Esipisu that U.S. President Barack Obama will visit Kenya in July to attend the 2015 Global Entrepreneurship Summit, to be co-hosted by Kenya and the U.S. This is the first time, I believe, that a sitting American president is visiting Kenya, and the ambassador tells me yes, that is correct. True. Let's go to number 8 now. And yes, it is football. It's the Ghana versus Senegal match. The 2 teams participated in an international friendly match in France on Saturday. Both teams are looking to freshen up their teams ahead of the next bout of qualifiers for the 2017 Africa Cup of Nations, AFCON. Let's take a look at number 7 now. This is an interesting one. Trevor Noah, 31, is a South African comedian and an on-air contributor on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, my favorite international news show. On Monday, 30th March, Comedy Central announced that Trevor Noah would be the new host of The Daily Show, succeeding Mr. Stewart after he steps down later this year. It's a comedy show, but a hard-hitting news show as well, I do believe. And there was some controversy as well. We'll discuss that, I think, in a moment, Robert. Number 6, Brazil versus Chile. We're back to the football. And 2 teams played a friendly match on Sunday at the Emirates Stadium in London, UK. Brazil edged out Chile 1-0. Just moving away from the Garissa attack and terrorism for just a moment, a South African is named as the new host of what is certainly one of America's most popular comedy stroke news shows, The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. What was your reaction to that?
My reaction is it's terrific. It's great to see, frankly, a South African come in to do what is really a superb program. It is very widely watched in the United States, so I think it's a great sign of how the world is globalizing.
It is, isn't it? It's a fascinating thing, and congratulations to Trevor Noah on that. Now, coming back to perhaps globalization and what we can learn from each other, and earlier we were talking about the fence. And there are people, there's been talk of a fence or a wall or some kind of barrier being created between Somalia and Kenya. What are your experiences with the Mexico border? How are you dealing with that, and what are you finding is successful in terms of providing security?
Julie, fences some places sometimes are necessary, and they can help with security. But it can only be part of a solution. It has to be part of a much broader package of things. So there has to be proper intelligence gathering. There have to be police patrols. You have to have the proper ability at ports of entry to check on people who are coming and going. So a fence can be fine in some circumstances, but it really does have to be part of a broad package of solutions to ensure that your border is secure. That's certainly something we very much learned in the United States.
Okay, so we need to be more comprehensive in the way we approach this issue. 9/11 changed America in very many ways. What were the most critical lessons you took from 9/11? And what do you think can be adapted and utilized here?
Well, 9/11 was obviously a terrible shock for Americans to see aircraft being flown into the Twin Towers, into the Pentagon, into a field in Pennsylvania. And the fact of terrorists being able to carry out this attack was a terrible thing. One of the things that we did afterwards is we looked hard at how we as a government were protecting American citizens. Were we doing the right sorts of things? Were we having the right interagency cooperation? And so we had a very in-depth review of these things. And the review, the report that came out was very comprehensive, and it identified a number of areas in which we had failed. And we set about changing them. And really it has dramatically altered the way the U.S. government works. There's much more interagency cooperation, communication, efforts by security agencies to deal with the threats together. It also got us focused on the problem of countering violent extremism, which is a major challenge today for all of us. And I think we're still, in each of these areas, learning. But there are no doubt things out of our experience that we can share with Kenya, and in fact, which we are sharing with Kenya.
Right. People are sending in their thoughts, and Ralph Kimodo in Nairobi says the U.S. can help by training more personnel, that is ongoing, of our Recce squad in particular, and provide intel and logistics in Somalia, more intel, and deploy more drones. He says, are we doing enough when it comes to use of technology?
You know, there's always more that could be done, but the answer is yes, and that we're working very closely with you, with Kenya, in the technology area. So there's always opportunities to do more, but I can assure you that that's a focus area.
Thank you. I'm going to ask our director, just get our poll results. No, we don't have a poll result. We just have the questions coming in. We're going to be selecting some. I think the team at the back will select some tweets for us to read as I go through some more of the SMSs. Somebody is asking, Julie, please ask the U.S. ambassador, is the Al-Shabaab a gang for hire? Why only 5 terrorists? Is this a normal trend? So perhaps he's asking, look, is this about mercenaries? You know, what's going on here? Is it a normal trend that you'd have a small group of people go in and do so much damage?
They're not mercenaries, they're terrorists, and this is a terrorist organization.
So it is the belief, it is an ideology.
It's an ideology, it's a murderous ideology. It's an ideology of death. You know, one point I feel is very important is that, you know, Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, these are not Muslims. These are not people who adhere to the Islamic faith. These folks are murderers. They're violent extremists, and they have put themselves outside any religion. So it's critically important, again, that we deal with this ideology of death.
A final question as we wind up, and I'll ask you for your final thoughts for the nation at this difficult time. It seems that, you know, there is a push to do two things. Number one, to cause religious some kind of conflict, religious conflict, and number two, to attack educational institutions in particular. So education is clearly an enemy of the Al-Shabaab. What are your comments when it comes to that?
There's no doubt that Al-Shabaab, just like ISIS and some of these other groups, are trying to divide Kenya. They're trying to divide civilized people everywhere. They're trying to divide Christians from Muslims. They're trying to divide different ethnic groups. They're trying to drive a wedge and set us one against the other. So one of the most important things that we need to do is come together. We need to come together in a unified way to fight this ideology and ultimately to put an end to the threat. That is one of my most important messages. Unity, effort together, cooperation, partnership, and that's one of the reasons certainly why I am very pleased to be here in Kenya, which is such a critical partner in this fight against terror.
So thank you so much. Ambassador Robert Godec has been with us, the U.S. Ambassador to Kenya, and he says what is critical right now is unity, because what they want is chaos and disunity. So can this nation hold together? I think they can. I'm just going to quickly read part of the statement from the President of the United States. Barack and Michelle Obama released a statement, and he said, "This much is clear. The future of Kenya will not be defined by violence and terror. It will be shaped by young people like those at Garissa University College, by their talents, their hopes, and their achievements." And so he says, you know, at the end of the day, lives have been lost. Let's honor these people by ensuring that the path that we take is one of unity and progression, and we don't allow the Al-Shabaab to achieve their end, which is a disunited nation. Thank you so much for joining us in studio, and we hope to talk to you more. Certainly we hope to host Barack Obama when he comes into the country, and we look forward to July. Thank you for coming in. We're taking a break on Sunday Live, but stay with us. Still much more on the way.